So let's talk about a different way to learn. It's not about studying harder, but about finding a quieter, smarter, and much more effective approach. This is really about learning how to work with your mind instead of constantly fighting against it. Have you ever had that feeling? You know the one. That strange, hollow sense after a long study session. You've spent hours with a book, you've highlighted, you've reread pages, but then when you actually need the information, it's just gone. It's an incredibly frustrating experience, but here's the thing. It's not a sign that you have a bad memory. It's usually just a sign that you're using the wrong method. Okay, let's get to the heart of it. The whole problem really boils down to this difference between recognition and recall. See, when you highlight and reread, you're building recognition. It's that warm, easy feeling of familiarity where your brain just goes, oh yeah, I've seen this before. But think about it. A test, or any real-world situation, almost never asks you to just recognize something. It asks you to recall it, to pull it out of thin air from the depths of your own mind. And that, well, that's a completely different mental muscle. I love this metaphor because it's so true. When you're learning passively, you're basically a tourist. You're just sightseeing information, watching it go by. It's nice, it's low effort, but it's not deep. But to really learn something, you have to be more like an athlete. You have to actively train that muscle of retrieval. It's supposed to feel like a bit of a workout because that's what builds real mental strength. So, how do we actually make that switch? How do we go from being a tourist to an athlete? Well, the solution isn't about just trying harder. It's about training smarter. So let's look at the actual science of how our brains are designed to build lasting memories. The first big idea is something called active recall. Think about it like this. Imagine your mind is a garden. Just reading a book is like watering the garden. You're pouring information in. But active recall, that's the act of reaching in and gently pulling a plant up by its roots just to check on its health. That little bit of strain, that effort, is exactly what tells the roots to grow deeper and stronger.
And that little bit of strain, that struggle, it actually has a name in psychology. It's called the testing effect. It's this beautiful, counterintuitive idea that the most important part of learning isn't when you're taking information in, but when you're struggling to pull it back out. That effort is a signal. It tells your brain, hey, this is important. We need to hold on to this one.
Now, let's build on that with the second core principle. It's called spaced repetition. You see, forgetting isn't a failure. It's just a natural thing our brains do. And spaced repetition works with that process. Instead of cramming everything at once, you strategically review information at longer and longer intervals. The goal is to catch the memory right at the moment it's about to fade away.
And you can see exactly how this works with the forgetting curve. Look, on day 1, your memory is at 100%. But after just a single day, it can drop by half. But here's the magic. A single, well-timed review a couple of days later doesn't just bring it back. It actually changes the shape of the curve. It makes the next drop-off much slower. Each time you review, you're not just remembering, you're rebuilding the memory to be stronger than before until it's locked in for the long term.
So, why does that little bit of struggle feel so powerful? Well, it might have something to do with a fascinating quirk of the mind called the Zeigarnik Effect. Our brains, for whatever reason, tend to get a little obsessed with unfinished business. When you struggle to recall something, you're essentially opening a loop in your mind. It's an incomplete task, and your brain will keep chewing on it in the background until that loop is finally closed. Okay, the science is really elegant, right? But what matters most is how we can actually use it. So let's translate all this theory into 3 very simple, very practical techniques that you can start using, well, today. These are the 3 pillars of what we're calling Study Mode 2.0. We've got the 3-sentence summary, which is all about getting to the core idea, the Feynman Technique for finding where you're weak, and the Jolt Method for building those strong connections. Okay, first up, and this one is so beautifully simple. After you read a chapter, or maybe just a few pages, I want you to physically close the book, set it aside, and then, on a blank piece of paper, challenge yourself to summarize the absolute essence of what you just read in exactly 3 sentences. The constraint is the powerful part. It forces you to go beyond the minor details and really wrestle with the main idea. Technique number 2 comes from the physicist Richard Feynman. It's brilliant. You take a concept you're trying to learn and you just try to explain it out loud in the simplest words you can find. Imagine you're talking to a kid. Now, pay attention to where you get stuck. The moment you hesitate or you have to use a complicated, jargony word, that's it. You've just found the exact edge of your understanding. Now you know precisely what you need to go back and study. And our final tip is all about adding a tiny, intentional moment of effort. So when you're reviewing your notes or flashcards, look at the question or the prompt, and then physically turn away before you try to answer. Force your brain to do the work without the safety net. And if you're stuck, make your best guess before you turn back to check the answer. That tiny moment of guessing, of struggling, that's the jolt that forges a much, much stronger memory. Now, I know this can sound like a lot to take in all at once, but the goal here is not to perfectly implement some brand new system overnight. Real change, real learning, it happens with the first small, deliberate step you decide to take.
So just hold this idea in your mind. Progress, not perfection. This is all about being a little more intentional, a little smarter with your time. It's about learning to embrace that small moment of struggle and understanding that it's not a sign you're failing, it's a sign you're actually learning.
So I'll just leave you with this one question. Don't worry about tomorrow or next week. Just think about your very next study session. What is the one small change you will make? Maybe you just put the highlighter down and pick up a blank piece of paper instead. That one simple choice could be the beginning of everything.